The announcement of a $228 billion defense and infrastructure agreement did more than introduce a large financial figure into the headlines. It immediately altered expectations inside Washington, particularly within the Pentagon, where long-standing coordination with close allies has often been treated as routine. For decades, major defense decisions across North America followed a familiar script. Consultations were predictable. Procurement strategies were aligned early. Strategic posture was rarely a surprise. Yet this agreement emerged with a different tone. It signaled that one of America's closest partners was prepared to act decisively and independently, without first seeking the quiet reassurance of traditional gatekeepers. The scale of $228 billion is significant, but the real impact lies in what it represents: a recalibration of influence. Defense partnerships are not simply about equipment or contracts. They are about trust, leverage, and mutual expectations. When a deal of this magnitude is unveiled without the usual choreography, it forces policymakers to reassess assumptions that may have gone unquestioned for years. Inside the Pentagon, such developments are not processed emotionally, but strategically. Analysts begin reviewing supply chains. Officials examine interoperability implications. Lawmakers request briefings to understand whether long-term military planning requires adjustment. A $228 billion commitment inevitably affects defense manufacturers, research investments, and regional security calculations. It also sends a broader message to global observers. Allies notice when a country demonstrates procurement autonomy. Competitors study the implications for future alliances. Markets evaluate which industries will benefit and which may lose anticipated contracts. None of this unfolds in dramatic fashion, yet the consequences are real and measurable. Strategic alignment is built on predictability. When predictability shifts, even slightly, it introduces a new dynamic into diplomatic and military relationships. This agreement does not dissolve partnerships, nor does it create immediate confrontation. Instead, it illustrates how influence evolves. Power within alliances is rarely static. It adjusts according to economic strength, political leadership, and national priorities. In that sense, the significance of this moment is not rooted in shock value, but in the steady recognition that established patterns of coordination can change. And when they do, institutions as powerful as the Pentagon must adapt accordingly. For generations, defense coordination between Canada and the United States has operated within an almost automatic framework. From the creation of North American Aerospace Defense Command to joint modernization planning under NATO, strategic alignment has rarely been questioned. That is why Canada asserting an independent defense procurement decision without prior synchronization with Washington carries weight beyond the contract itself. This is not a rupture of alliance, nor is it an act of defiance. It is a demonstration of sovereignty expressed through policy. When a government chooses to pursue a $228 billion agreement on its own timeline and terms, it signals that consultation no longer means automatic alignment. For decades, the expectation inside Washington was that large-scale defense moves would be closely choreographed. Advance notice, shared industrial benefits, and predictable procurement channels were part of the unwritten understanding. By stepping outside that rhythm, Canada is redefining how partnership functions. The message is measured but clear. Cooperation remains intact, yet decisions will reflect national priorities first. That subtle shift changes the tone of North American defense politics. The implications of this autonomy extend well beyond a single agreement. Inside the Pentagon, planners rely on predictability to maintain interoperability and supply chain integration. When a close ally acts independently, it introduces a new variable into long-term strategic modeling. Defense contractors reassess where production lines will expand. Lawmakers evaluate how domestic industries may be affected. Diplomats consider whether this signals a broader trend among allies seeking diversified partnerships. Independence in procurement does not weaken alliances automatically, but it reshapes leverage within them. It reminds policymakers that influence must be maintained through mutual benefit rather than assumption. Canada's decision suggests confidence in its economic and strategic footing, demonstrating that alignment with Washington is a choice, not an obligation. For global observers, the signal is equally significant. If one of America's closest partners can recalibrate coordination without triggering crisis, Others may explore similar flexibility. This is how geopolitical landscapes evolve, not through dramatic announcements, but through deliberate policy decisions that quietly expand national agency. The Pentagon's adjustment, therefore, is not about reacting to confrontation. It is about recognizing that even stable alliances can mature into more balanced arrangements, where consultation continues, but automatic synchronization no longer defines the relationship. $228 billion is not simply a budget figure. It is a strategic statement written in numbers. When a government commits that scale of funding to defense and infrastructure, it reshapes expectations across an entire continent. Financial magnitude at this level affects supply chains, labor markets, research institutions, and diplomatic leverage simultaneously. In North America, security partnerships have long depended on deep industrial integration between the United States and Canada. Defense manufacturers share components, technology standards, and long-term planning frameworks. A commitment of $228 billion introduces a recalibration of that integration. It signals that future procurement, research development, and infrastructure modernization may follow a path defined less by historical patterns and more by domestic priorities. The scale alone compels attention inside the Pentagon, because numbers of this size influence multi-year planning cycles. Military readiness is tied to predictable funding streams and collaborative production timelines. When such a substantial agreement is structured independently, it prompts a reassessment of how interconnected those streams truly are. Financial decisions at this level become geopolitical instruments, shaping not only equipment inventories but also bargaining power within alliances. Beyond procurement, the agreement redefines how North American security partnerships are perceived globally. Allies observe whether economic weight translates into strategic autonomy. Competitors analyze whether financial independence signals shifting influence. $228 billion has the capacity to generate domestic employment, expand technological innovation, and strengthen national industries. That economic reinforcement inevitably increases diplomatic flexibility. When a country demonstrates that it can sustain large-scale defense modernization on its own terms, it enhances its negotiating position in multinational forums. This does not dissolve cooperative frameworks, but it adjusts their balance. The United States has traditionally occupied the dominant financial role within regional defense planning. A partner committing comparable resources alters that dynamic. It suggests a move toward a more symmetrical partnership, where influence is distributed through capability rather than assumed hierarchy. Over time, such financial commitments can redefine joint exercises, technology sharing agreements, and procurement standards. Markets respond as well, redirecting capital toward emerging industrial hubs tied to the agreement. The ripple effect extends from manufacturing floors to diplomatic summits. In that sense, the significance of $228 billion lies not in spectacle, but in structure. It quietly reconfigures expectations about who leads, who follows, and how North American security partnerships evolve in an era where economic power and strategic autonomy are increasingly intertwined. Inside the Pentagon, surprises are rare by design. Modern defense institutions are built on forecasting, intelligence briefings, interagency coordination, and constant communication with allied governments. That is why reports that senior defense officials were caught off guard by the sudden unveiling of a $228 billion agreement carry particular significance. The reaction was not theatrical, but it was immediate. When a major ally moves at that scale without the usual sequence of advanced consultations, it disrupts established planning rhythms. Analysts rely on shared timelines to align procurement cycles, joint exercises, and long-term modernization strategies. A surprise announcement forces rapid reassessment. Briefing rooms fill quickly. Questions move from budget implications to interoperability concerns. How will this affect shared defense systems? Will production lines shift? Are there downstream impacts on cooperative research programs? The element of surprise matters because predictability is a cornerstone of military planning. When predictability narrows even slightly, it introduces friction into a system that depends on coordination. The reaction inside the building was less about alarm and more about recalibration. Yet recalibration at this level signals that expectations had clearly been disrupted. Beyond the immediate briefings and internal reviews, the broader reaction reflects a deeper institutional concern about influence and visibility. The Pentagon maintains close working relationships with allied defense ministries precisely to avoid strategic blind spots. Being caught off guard suggests that communication channels may not be as synchronized as once assumed. Senior officials must now evaluate whether this was a singular deviation or part of a broader pattern of increasing autonomy. Defense manufacturers connected to joint projects begin seeking clarity. Congressional committees request updates to understand potential impacts on domestic contracts. None of this unfolds publicly with dramatic declarations, but internally, the process is rigorous. The surprise highlights how alliances evolve over time. Long-standing cooperation can create expectations that become routine, even comfortable. When a partner asserts independent timing and strategy, it tests those routines. The Pentagon's response, therefore, is measured but deliberate. It must adapt to a reality in which even close allies may choose to act with greater independence. The shock is not about confrontation. It is about recognition that strategic environments are fluid. Institutions built on anticipation must now account for the possibility that significant decisions can emerge with little warning, requiring agility rather than assumption. For years, cross-border defense cooperation operated within a political climate shaped heavily by strong personalities and forceful rhetoric. Influence was often projected publicly, framed as decisive leadership that could steer allied decisions through confidence and pressure. That dynamic created an assumption inside Washington that alignment would follow political gravity. Yet the unveiling of a $228 billion agreement outside of that gravitational pull signals a measurable weakening of prior political influence. Influence in international partnerships is rarely permanent. It depends on credibility, consistency, and mutual benefit. When an ally proceeds with a large-scale defense commitment independently, it suggests that persuasion has limits. The expectation that political capital alone can guide procurement strategy appears less certain. This moment does not erase previous influence, but it demonstrates that alliances evolve beyond individual leaders. Defense policy is shaped by institutional interests, economic calculations, and domestic priorities that outlast political cycles. When those forces outweigh prior political sway, the shift becomes visible. What we are witnessing is not confrontation, but recalibration. It is the quiet realization that influence must be sustained through partnership rather than assumption. The weakening of prior political leverage carries broader implications for how alliances function moving forward. Inside policy circles, there is a growing understanding that durable influence comes from structural cooperation rather than personal alignment. When leadership changes, alliances remain. When rhetoric fades, supply chains and defense agreements endure. The recent agreement underscores that long-term partnerships are anchored in strategic benefit, not symbolic loyalty. Lawmakers and defense officials now assess how political messaging translates into tangible coordination. If an ally feels confident enough to pursue a massive investment independently, it signals that domestic consensus within that country outweighs external pressure. That development reshapes diplomatic calculations. It encourages a more balanced approach where collaboration is negotiated, not presumed. The erosion of automatic political influence does not weaken the alliance itself. Instead, it may strengthen it by clarifying boundaries and expectations. Partnerships grounded in mutual respect are often more resilient than those sustained by dominance. In that sense, the crumbling of prior political leverage is less about loss and more about transition. It reflects a shift toward a landscape where influence is earned continuously through shared objectives, economic integration, and strategic transparency rather than maintained through personality or precedent alone. The domestic political consequences of a $228 billion defense agreement announced without prior alignment are immediate, even if they unfold quietly at first. In Washington, major international deals rarely remain confined to foreign policy circles. They migrate quickly into congressional hearings, cable news discussions, and campaign rhetoric. Lawmakers begin asking whether American industries were sidelined or whether domestic manufacturing will feel competitive pressure. Committee chairs request classified briefings to understand procurement implications. Governors from defense-heavy states look closely at potential impacts on local jobs tied to cross-border contracts. When a close ally commits that level of funding independently, it invites scrutiny about whether the United States is maintaining its strategic influence effectively. Political opponents may frame the development as evidence of diminished leverage, while supporters may argue it reflects the natural evolution of mature alliances. The debate becomes less about the specifics of the agreement and more about what it symbolizes domestically. In a polarized environment, symbolism matters. A financial figure as large as $228 billion becomes a proxy for larger narratives about strength, leadership, and global standing. Beyond partisan debate, the agreement influences broader public perception about economic competitiveness and defense readiness. Voters often interpret international defense deals through the lens of jobs and national security. If American firms anticipate reduced participation in certain contracts, that concern can quickly translate into political pressure. At the same time, policymakers must balance domestic economic interests with the long-term stability of alliances. Defense cooperation has historically provided mutual industrial benefits across borders, reinforcing supply chains and technological innovation. A recalibration on one side requires strategic adjustment on the other. Think tanks publish analyses. Editorial boards weigh in on whether the United States should pursue new bilateral frameworks or diversify its own procurement partnerships. The domestic political arena thrives on clear narratives, yet the reality is more nuanced. Alliances evolve. Partners assert autonomy. Influence shifts incrementally rather than dramatically. Still, in the context of American politics, even incremental shifts can carry outsized rhetorical weight. The true domestic consequence may not be policy reversal, but heightened awareness. Leaders will likely place greater emphasis on consultation and coordination moving forward, recognizing that international decisions of this magnitude inevitably echo within the halls of Congress and across the broader political landscape. When a nation commits $228 billion to a defense and infrastructure agreement on its own terms, the signal travels far beyond North America. Allies across Europe and the Indo-Pacific monitor such decisions carefully, not for spectacle, but for precedent. Strategic partnerships often operate on habit and historical alignment. When one partner demonstrates that it can recalibrate its defense posture independently, others take note. The message is subtle yet powerful. Economic strength can translate directly into diplomatic flexibility. Countries that rely heavily on established defense suppliers may begin reassessing diversification strategies. Governments evaluating long-term procurement plans could view this development as evidence that strategic autonomy is achievable without abandoning alliances. The signal is not about separation, it is about balance. In a global environment shaped by shifting supply chains and evolving security threats, autonomy carries weight. By acting decisively at such financial scale, the nation behind this agreement communicates that partnership does not require dependency. That perception alone can influence negotiations in multinational forums, from trade discussions to joint military planning sessions. At the same time, competitors analyze the implications with equal attention. Major powers that seek to expand their influence study how alliances adjust under economic pressure. If traditional expectations within one partnership can evolve, similar recalibrations may emerge elsewhere. Markets also respond. Defense contractors, technology firms, and infrastructure developers reassess where investment will flow over the next decade. Capital follows clarity, and a $228 billion commitment offers precisely that. It outlines priorities, timelines, and industrial direction. For smaller allied nations, the development may serve as encouragement to strengthen domestic industries before entering multilateral agreements. The broader signal is that leverage in the modern geopolitical landscape is increasingly tied to financial capacity and technological innovation. Military alliances remain vital, but economic independence enhances negotiating power within them. This agreement therefore operates on two levels, practical and symbolic. Practically, it restructures supply chains and defense planning. Symbolically, it underscores that alliances are dynamic relationships shaped by mutual interest rather than fixed hierarchy. In that evolving landscape, nations that invest boldly in their own capacity send a message heard well beyond their borders, reinforcing the idea that strategic balance is achieved not through dominance, but through confident, well-resourced partnership. The long-term strategic consequences of a $228 billion defense and infrastructure agreement will not be measured in weeks or even months, but in production cycles, research pipelines, and diplomatic recalculations that unfold over years. Military contracts are rarely isolated transactions. They shape industrial ecosystems. When funding of this magnitude is directed with clear national priorities, it influences where factories expand, where engineers are hired, and where innovation clusters develop. Defense manufacturing depends on predictability, and a commitment of this size provides precisely that for the industries involved. Over time, supply chains may realign to support new production hubs. Universities and private firms could adjust research agendas to align with emerging technological demands. These structural changes create momentum. Once established, industrial ecosystems are difficult to reverse. That reality means the agreement is not just about immediate procurement, but about embedding long-term capacity within a national framework. Strategic autonomy becomes reinforced by physical infrastructure, trained workforce, and sustained capital investment, all of which gradually shift the balance of influence within broader defense partnerships. Diplomatically, the ripple effects may prove equally significant. Long-term contracts often include technology sharing agreements, maintenance partnerships, and collaborative development projects. As these arrangements mature, they reshape who collaborates with whom and under what terms. A nation investing $228 billion gains leverage in future negotiations because it controls critical components of production and innovation. That leverage can influence trade discussions, alliance commitments, and even crisis coordination. At the same time, established defense suppliers may face increased competition, prompting them to modernize or diversify. This competitive dynamic can stimulate innovation across the sector, but it can also intensify strategic rivalry. Policymakers must therefore balance national industrial growth with the stability of existing alliances. Over the coming decade, the true measure of this agreement will appear in joint exercises, procurement renewals, and multilateral defense forums where influence is often exercised quietly. Contracts signed today become the architecture of tomorrow's partnerships. In that sense, the most profound consequence is structural. The agreement lays a foundation that will shape manufacturing capacity, diplomatic relationships, and strategic bargaining power long after the initial headlines fade, reinforcing the idea that financial decisions at this scale are inseparable from long-term geopolitical positioning.